How was your day? Maybe you spent it being patient. For someone, or for something. And the patience felt longer than it should have. Tonight is the right night for this story. There's a bear in the old Korean stories who waited 100 days inside a cave to become someone she wasn't yet. Her name was Ungnyeo. If today asked you to wait, she would understand. Let the room go quiet. We're going somewhere old. A mountain wrapped in cloud, a cave smelling of garlic and damp earth, and the kind of patience that changes a body from the inside out. Pine resin, cold stone, the smell of crushed mugwort. A woman steps out of the cave for the first time, bare feet, pale skin, long dark hair. And the morning is louder than she remembered. She had been a bear at the start of these 100 days. Now she has fingers, and a name she didn't have before. And the question already forming in her chest: what does a new being do with a new world? Long before this morning, two animals had watched human beings from the edge of the forest. A bear and a tiger. They saw something in those small two-legged creatures they wanted for themselves. Maybe you know the feeling. Looking at someone else's life and thinking, I want that. The bear and the tiger went to the foot of the holy mountain together to ask the gods. This is one of the oldest stories in Korea. Older than its kingdoms, older than its writing. A bear who became a woman who became the first mother, and a son who would become a king. This is what we do here. Every week, one story. One night, something old that still has something quiet to say to whoever is listening tonight. Get comfortable now. Adjust your pillow, find your warmth. If you drift off before the end, Ungnyeo waited 100 days. She won't mind if you rest a little. This is only the beginning of the story. The part most people never reach. The patience, the loneliness, the mourning of the first king, that's still ahead. But not tonight. Tonight, just this. If tonight felt like something, subscribe. We'll be here next week. Another story, another night like this. Now back to ours. To begin, we have to go higher than the mountain. Higher than the cloud above the mountain. Higher than the wind that lifts the cloud. To a place the old stories called simply heaven. In the highest place, on a throne made of cloud, sat the Lord of Heaven. His name was Hwanung. He had a long white beard, a quiet face, and eyes that held small points of starlight. Hwanung had a son, a young prince, Hwanung, who would stand at the edge of the cloud floor and look down at the green earth below, and want to be there, not above it. He told his father. He wanted to live among the humans down there, to teach them, to help them, to be one of the things that shaped a world still very young. Hwanung watched his son for a long time. Then he reached out and placed 3 small bronze seals on the cloud table between them. Wind, rain, cloud, take them, he said, go. That night Hwanung gathered 3,000 companions. They stepped to the cloud, edge together. Below them, a great mountain wrapped in mist. The descent had begun. The cloud opens beneath them. Hwanung steps through. A long column of pale gold light reaches down from the high heaven and touches the granite summit of Mount Taebake like a finger. His feet find stone, real stone. After the soft cloud floor of heaven, the granite is hard, and he likes it. He stands very still and listens to the wind moving through the pines below him. 3,000 companions land softly behind him. They look around, at the pines, the cloud, the long ridges of green and gray rolling away beneath. None of them have seen Earth this close before. Below the summit, on the lower slope, a great sandalwood tree had grown for 1,000 years. Its trunk was wider than 10 men. Hwanung walked down to it. This, he decided, would be the center. His companions tied 3 thick ribbons of golden silk around the trunk. One for the wind, one for the rain, one for the cloud. A small altar of flat stone was set among the roots. Then the sky did something. A pale blue figure, slender and barefoot, stepped out of the air beside the tree. The wind itself, taking a body, his name was Pungbake. A second figure stepped from a thin rain. Tall blue, robed, holding a small bronze bowl. Water dripped slowly from the hem of her dress. Yusa the rain spirit, she bowed once to Hwanung. A third stepped from a slow drift of mist, heavy set, pale gray, gentle in the face. The cloud spirit Unsa. The lower hem of his robe dissolved into white vapor as he moved. 3 spirits, 3 seals, the same words from heaven binding them all. Wind, rain, cloud, the things a young world needs to grow grain. The things a young people need to live. Hwanung lifted his hand. The wind moved. The rain came soft. The cloud lowered itself over the slopes like a hand placed gently on a child's head. The first thing he taught his companions was touch. The first humans on those slopes saw it. They came up from the riverside in 2s and 3s, drawn by the smell of fresh rain on a dry summer. They had not known rain to be so gentle. They stood at the edge of the tree's shadow and didn't know what to say. Hwanung came down from the altar. He was not what they had expected a god to look like. He was tall, but he was kind. He sat down with them on the ground, right on the dirt, the way a friend sits, not the way a god sits. He picked up a small handful of soil and let it fall through his fingers. "This is good earth," he told them. "You don't know yet what it can do." He pressed a single seed into the soil with his thumb. He covered it. He stood back up. "Wait," he said. A green thread of stem rose from the soil. Then a leaf. Then another. Within minutes, a small millet plant stood where the seed had been. The villagers held very still. Some of them began to cry quietly. "This is one of the 100 small things," he told them. "There are more." He stayed. They built him a low house of timber and thatch under the great tree. They began to call the place Shinshi, sacred city. 360 things, the old text says he taught. The making of fire, the shaping of clay into bowls, the weaving of hemp, the tying of knots, the reading of stars, the herding of small animals into safe pens, the sharpening of stone, the drying of fish on wooden frames, the healing of fevers with the bark of certain trees. Everything simple, everything useful. Hwanung watched them learn. He noticed something he had not expected to feel. He liked them. The slowness of their hands, the way they laughed at small things, the way they looked at the stars at night. At night, lying on a thin mat in his small house, he could hear them talking, a baby crying, a dog barking once and then stopping. The sounds of a place where life was happening. He thought about heaven, the cloud floor, the pale light, his father's quiet eyes, and he understood something he could not have understood up there. Earth was where the slowness was. The slowness was the gift. Here's the part the old stories rarely linger on. Heaven gave him 3 seals. Earth gave him something else. Time, the thing the gods don't have. Down here, things took how long they took. A field took a season. A child took 9 months. A village took years. A custom took generations. None of it could be rushed. None of it ever had been where his father lived. Stay with this. It matters before the end. The slowness is not the obstacle. The slowness is what makes a thing real. Hwanung learned it before his son did. His son would learn it from his mother. Years passed in Shinshi. The villagers grew. They had children. The children learned the 360 things and added a few of their own. Hwanung counted seasons by the grain. There were rules now. Not many. He kept them simple. Don't take what is not yours. Help the old. Care for the young. Tell the truth at the altar. Bury your dead with their tools. Disputes were brought to him. 2 villagers fighting over a fishing spot. A boy accused of stealing a bowl. A widow without grain. He listened to each of them as if they were the only one. He had time. He never raised his voice. The people noticed. They began to bring smaller and smaller disputes. Then they began to settle them themselves before walking up the hill. The hill made you remember. This was the gift no one had named yet. A presence at the top of the hill. A place to bring your worst self before you had to look another person in the eye. A pause built into the day. At dusk, Hwanung walked the boundaries. The edge of the millet fields. The bend of the slow river. The line where the Foothill forest began. He liked the boundary places. They reminded him of cloud. At one boundary, Where the millet ended and the Futhul forest began, he sometimes stopped longer. Something there watched him. Two somethings. He never saw them clearly. He felt them. The bear and the tiger had been watching for a long time. They were old animals. They had seen the cloud lower itself. They had seen the rain come gentle. They had seen him plant the first seed. They had also seen the children of Shinshi. Small two-legged creatures running between the houses, falling and getting up, held by larger ones, wrapped in hemp, singing one-note songs the bear could not understand. The bear especially watched the children. There was a feeling she did not know the name for, a pulling. As if a part of her wanted to step out of the trees and put down four paws and stand up. The tiger watched too. But what he wanted was different. He wanted the warmth of the village fire. He wanted the easy food. He wanted the way the small humans bowed when an elder passed. They were strange company, the bear and the tiger. Most of the time in the forest, they kept apart. But on the question of becoming human, they understood each other better than they would have liked. One night they spoke. The forest was very quiet. The bear said, "I want to be one of them." The tiger said, "Me too." Then they both sat for a long time without saying anything else. At dawn they walked together to the foot of the great mountain. They could not climb to the summit, but they could climb to the sandalwood tree. They sat down before its altar and they waited. The villagers kept their distance. A bear and a tiger at the altar was not a thing anyone had words for. Word reached Hwanung. He came down from his low house and walked to the tree. He stopped a few steps from the altar. He looked at the bear, then at the tiger. He said, "I see you. What do you want?" They could not speak with their mouths, but they could let him see. He saw the bear's pulling, the tiger's hunger for warm fires. He understood. He stood very still for a long time, thinking about what to do. He had not expected this. The mountain had not warned him. This is one of the oldest pieces of Korean storytelling. A god who came down, a bear who longed upward. The mountain in between. Long before kings, before writing, people climbed mountains to speak with the sky. They called the spirit of each mountain its Sanshin. Old and patient, and not always kind. The peaks were where the sky came closest to the earth, where you could ask a question and almost hear an answer. Korean shamans, the Mudang, would later call themselves descendants of those first conversations. Drum, dance, voice. Climbing the cloud ladder Hwanung had walked down. The path was open in both directions. And the tree, always the tree, the Sindansu, the sandalwood at Shinshi, became the model for thousands of village shrine trees across Korea. Make a wish, wait. The tying of a ribbon is the same gesture, 3,000 years apart. A small thing left, a small wish made, a small willingness to wait. Hwanung's first teaching, still alive in any village field. Back at the altar, where the bear and the tiger waited, Hwanung came to a decision. He turned to the small group of villagers gathered at a respectful distance and asked them to bring two things. "Garlic," he said, 20 cloves, white and clean, and a bundle of mugwort, the bitter green herb that grows in patches near the mountain spring. "Bring me both," the villagers ran. They went up the mountain to the spring where the mugwort grew thickest. The smell of it bruised under their hands, sharp, green, almost medicinal. They cut a single bundle. They did not take more than was needed. Down at the village, another villager pulled 20 cloves of garlic from a strung braid hanging in a thatched larder. White, papery fat, she placed them in a small wooden bowl. She did not ask why. They brought both back up the hill. Hwanung set the bowl of garlic and the bundle of mugwort on the altar between him and the two animals. He looked at the bear. He looked at the tiger. He told them, "There is a cave at the base of the mountain. You will go to it together. You will eat only this, the garlic, the mugwort. You will not see sunlight for 100 days. If you can endure, you will become human." 100 days. The number sat in the air between them. The bear's nostrils flared once. The tiger's tail moved once. Neither of them spoke. They turned and walked together toward the cave. Hwanung watched them go. He did not follow. The trial had to be theirs. He set the bowl and the bundle inside the cave entrance. He stepped back. He drew a thin pale line in the dirt across the threshold. Inside, the cave was darker than they had expected. The air smelled of wet stone and old roots. A small shaft of gray light came through the entrance. The bear sat down, the tiger sat down. They began. The first day. The bear took a single clove of garlic between her teeth. It burned. She chewed slowly. She swallowed. She lay down on the cool earth and closed her eyes and breathed through the burning. The tiger stared at the bowl. He had eaten meat his whole life. The pale cloves looked small and wrong. He paced a few times. He sat. He pawed at the bowl. He waited until hunger pushed him. He took a clove, he bit. He spat. The taste was sharper than fire. He lay down on his side and his stomach roared at him. He thought about the deer that ran in the Foothill forest just outside. Day 2. The bear ate another clove. She chewed slowly, she swallowed. She lay down. The tiger watched her. He thought, she's not eating any more than I am. Why is she calmer? He could not understand. Day 5. The tiger paced the cave wall to wall. The bear lay still. She chewed mugwort now and then. The bitterness was a kind of clearing, as if it scrubbed her insides without her asking. Day 8. The tiger could not bear the smell of the mugwort anymore. The garlic he had stopped trying. His coat was duller. His ribs were beginning to show through the orange and black stripes. Day 12. The tiger lifted his head and looked at the cave entrance. The thin pale line Hwanung had drawn was still there, faint, but the mountain wind on the other side of it smelled of deer, of running. Day 13. The tiger stood up. He looked once at the bear. She did not lift her head. He walked to the cave entrance. He put one paw across the pale line. The line did not stop him. He could not endure. That is not the same as failing. The line let him go. He bounded once into the daylight, and once again and again, and the Foothill forest closed around him like an old skin returned. The bear opened her eyes. She heard him go. She did not call out. She did not feel betrayed. She thought, that was his way. Mine is not his. She closed her eyes again. Day 1387 to go. Day 20. Day 21. The bear noticed a small change in her own body. The fur on her muzzle felt different, slightly thinner, as if something underneath was beginning to consider becoming something else. She did not look. She did not check. She had decided not to ask the question of whether it was working. Asking the question was a way of leaving. She had seen the tiger leave. She would not. Maybe you know that feeling. The moment when curiosity becomes the enemy of patience. When checking ruins the thing you are waiting for. The bear had a bear's gift for this. She did not check. Day 21. She woke at the usual hour. The cave was quieter than usual. Or maybe she was. She put her paw down to push herself up. The paw was not a paw. It had fingers. 21 days. Not 100. The old story is honest about that. She had endured enough. She had not asked the question. The mountain decided that 21 was enough. The cave released her. She walked to the entrance. The pale line Hwanung had drawn was still there faintly. She placed her bare foot across it. The line did not stop her either. The line had never been a stop. It had been a witness. She stepped out into the morning. The world was louder than she remembered. Birds, wind in the pines, a faint distant call from the village below. She held one hand up to her face to shade the sun. She walked a few steps. The grass was different against bare skin than it had been against fur. Cooler, sharper. She could feel each blade. She walked until she came to a small pool of clear water. She knelt at the water and looked at her own face. She had no name yet. She watched her reflection blink. She watched the long black hair fall around her cheeks. She thought, so this is what they look like. From the inside. Word reached Shinshi. A villager who had gone up to the mountain spring saw her at the pool and ran back down. By midday Hwanung was walking up the long path. He came alone. He found her at the pool. She had stood up. She did not bow. She did not run. She looked at him. He looked at her. There were no words yet for either of them. That was all right. He spoke first. You did it, he said. She nodded once. He said, What name will you have? She thought for a long moment. Ungnyeo, she said. The bear woman. He bowed his head once. They walked back down the mountain together. He led. She followed at a few paces. Her bare feet were not used to the path, the pebbles, the pine needles. She did not complain. She walked. At the edge of Shinshi, the villagers were already gathered. Word travels faster than feet. They watched her come out from under the trees. They had been told. They were not sure what they had been told. She walked into the village. Children stopped where they were. A small dog barked once and fell silent. She did not look at any of them directly. She kept her eyes on the great tree at the center. At the great tree she stopped. She placed her palm on the ancient bark, some part of her. The bare part still alive somewhere under the new skin. Recognized this tree. It had been the center even from the forest. An old woman came forward through the crowd. She had a thin folded cloth in her hands. Without speaking, she draped it over Ungnyeo's shoulders. The first gesture she received in the village. Welcome in cloth. They built her a small house, not far from Hwanung's, a single low room of timber and thatch, a thin straw mat, a small clay bowl, a single wooden cup, the minimum a human needed to begin. That first night she did not sleep. She lay on the thin mat. She listened. The sounds of the village were strange in a different way now, not from outside, but as her own. She listened to them belonged to her. At dawn she stepped outside. The air was cool. A young village woman was already at her door with a small bowl of warm millet porridge. She held it out without speaking. Ungnyeo took it. She ate. She had eaten only garlic and mugwort for 21 days. The taste of warm millet was new. The first sweet thing in a long time. She closed her eyes. She did not say anything. The village woman bowed and left. Hwanung came that morning. He sat with her on the small wooden step of her house. He brought a small bronze mirror. He held it up so she could see her own face in the polished metal. She studied it slowly. I look like them, she said. Her first words inside the village. Her voice was lower than she had expected, slow. The shape of human speech still finding its way through her throat. You are them, he said. You are also yourself. Both can be true. She thought about this for a long time. The morning grew warmer. A child ran past on the path and waved. Ungnyeo lifted her hand slowly. The villagers brought her things. Small things. A wooden comb. A small hemp shawl. A handful of dried persimmons. They did not stay. They placed the gifts on her step and bowed, and left her to learn. She picked up the wooden comb. She did not know what it was for. She turned it slowly between her fingers. Hwanung pretended not to watch. She lifted it experimentally toward her hair. She tried. The comb caught. She made a small sound. She tried again more slowly. It worked. She did the next strand, the next. By evening her hair lay smooth around her shoulders. A small private accomplishment. She learned the village in pieces. The names of paths. The hours when the smoke from cooking fires meant which meal. The faces of the elders. The faces of the children. The dog that always slept by the well. She learned to weave. She sat with the older village women in the long afternoons. They showed her how to thread the warp. She broke many threads at first. She did not get frustrated. She had a bear's patience for slow things. She learned to make a fire. She rubbed 2 pieces of wood together as she had been shown. The first time, smoke and nothing more. The second time, a tiny ember. She knelt and breathed on it the way you breathe on a small life. She learned to fish. The villagers showed her a long thin spear and a slow corner of the river. She missed the first dozen times. Then she stopped trying to be quick. She stood very still. The fish came close. She waited. She caught one. A small silver fish. She brought it back through the village without celebration. She walked the way she always walked. Even-paced. Steady. The villagers noticed without saying. She was learning their rhythms. She learned the names of the stars from an old man who sat outside his house each clear night. He pointed. He named. She repeated. The 7 northern stars. The river of the milk cloud. The hunter and his hound. At night, in her small house, she sometimes practiced the names. She whispered them to herself in the dark. The long words sat in her mouth like pebbles she was learning to hold. A season passed. The millet ripened and was harvested. The villagers cut it together in long rows. Ungnyeo worked beside them with a small bronze sickle. Her hands grew calloused, her arms grew brown. At the harvest feast that evening she sat among the women of the village. Someone laughed at something. The other women laughed. Ungnyeo did not understand the joke, but she saw the laughter and her own mouth moved. A small first laugh. After the feast, walking home across the village in the dark, she stopped on the path. She looked up at the stars. She thought, I am a person. The thought was so small and so large at the same time, it almost knocked her down. Another season. The leaves changed. The cold came down from the mountain. She wove her own warm robe out of layered hemp and quilted it with dry leaves. The first piece of clothing she made for herself. She wore it that evening. She walked through the village to show it. The women nodded. One of them adjusted the collar at her shoulder without asking. A small unspoken correction, the shape of belonging. Sometimes it was a hand on a collar. She still went to see Hwanung often, most evenings. They sat outside his low house. They did not always speak. He had a way of being quiet beside her that made the silence its own kind of company. He asked her once, "What do you miss?" She thought for a long time. "The forest," she said. "Not all of it. Just the part where the cedars meet the slow river. The smell of cedar after rain." He nodded. He asked, "Do you want to go back?" She thought again sometimes. Then no. The going back is not the same as having been. He did not speak for a long time. He understood her better than she had expected anyone to. A second season, snow came down. The first time she had seen snow as a person. As a bear she had slept through winters. As a woman she did not. She walked outside in the snow at dawn and lifted her face to it. The cold went all the way through her in a way it had not gone through fur. It was sharper. She liked it. She walked all the way to the bend of the slow river and stood watching the water move under thin sheets of ice. It was on that morning, watching the water move under the ice, that the loneliness reached her for the first time. Quiet, not painful. Just a small recognition that there was no one in the world who was the same kind of thing she was. She thought, there are bears in the forest. There are humans in the village. I am between. I am only myself. She did not cry. She was a bear's woman. She walked back to the village and took up her work. Spring came. The mugwort in the mountain meadow grew thick again. She walked up to it one afternoon alone. She knelt at the spring. She crushed a single leaf between her fingers and smelled it. The smell of her own becoming. Another season, the longing was still there. It got slowly larger, not smaller. She did not speak about it. She did not want to ask Hwanung for anything. He had given her a body. She was not going to ask him for a partner. She began to walk to the pine grove on the lower slope of the mountain at dusk. The tall ancient pines with reddish bark. The soft brown floor of needles, the pale gray rocks among the roots. She did not know why. She just went. At first she just sat. The pines were old. They had a quality of attention that made her feel less alone without her doing anything about it. She sat and watched the light move from amber to deep blue. Then she walked home. After many evenings of just sitting, she began to speak, not to anyone, just out loud, a few sentences each evening. The pines listened in the way old trees listen, without offering advice, without leaving. She said, "I am alone in a way no one else here is alone. I do not blame anyone. I have my house. I have my work. I have warm porridge in the morning. I have stars at night, but no one knows what I was." She said, "I do not want to be a bear again. I want to be what I am. But what I am has no one to share it with." She did not cry when she said it. She had a bear's strength for sitting still inside a hard thing. She said, "If there is anyone listening, anywhere, in the cloud or on the mountain or somewhere I cannot see, I am not asking for much. I am asking for one who would know me as I am." That was all she said the first time. She walked home through the dusk. She did not feel different. She did not feel lighter. She had said the words. The pines had heard. That was as much as could be done that evening. She went back the next evening. And the next. She did not always speak. Sometimes she just sat. She had a sense, without words for it, that something needed time, even on the other side, to hear. Word reached Hwanung that she was going up there. He did not ask her about it. He understood that some prayers are not for the ears of the one being asked. He waited. He felt the quiet pulling of her words, even from his low house at the village. He thought about what to do. He thought for many evenings. He could simply tell her, "There is no one." He could simply tell her, "Wait." He did not want to do either. He wanted to think more carefully than that. Days became weeks. Ungnyeo went each evening to the pines. Hwanung walked the boundary. The village kept on. The millet rose in green rows. The slow river went on slow. Outside, nothing seemed to change. But underneath, something was deciding. The mountain. Hwanung's heart. The cloud above the summit. The cloud spirit. The wind spirit. The rain spirit. They all heard, they all considered. Stay with this. It matters before the end. A prayer made into the right kind of silence does something. Not always quickly. Not always in the way the one praying expects. But the silence is not empty. The silence is keeping count. Garlic and mugwort. Pause with that. Why these two, of all the plants on the mountain? The old story does not explain. But the village knew. Their grandmothers had used both for long quiet centuries. Garlic in old Korea was the herb of becoming clean. They put it under sick beds. They hung it in doorways against bad spirits. They believed it could clear what should not be there. The cave needed clearing. Mugwort in old Korea was the herb of suk, patience and bitterness held together. Mothers chewed it during long labors. Healers burned it slowly in cones on the skin. It was the plant of slow heat, the plant of wading through pain. Together, clearing and patience. That was the recipe Hwanung gave the bear. Not a magic that did the work for her. A medicine that helped her do the work herself. The cave only released her because she released the bear from inside. 3,000 years later, Korean grandmothers still hang garlic at the door. They still burn mugwort cones on aching backs. The same plants. The same patience, the same shape of healing. The myth lives in their hands. Back at the pine grove, evening number 47. Ungnyeo sat among the roots. She had said her sentence. She did not know how many sentences a prayer was supposed to be. She was prepared for many more. She said, that evening, "I do not need someone like the villagers. I do not need someone like a bear. I need someone who knows what it is to have been one thing and become another. That kind of someone." She had not said that before. The shape of it was new. She thought about it as she walked home that night. The road through the Footstep forest was darker than usual. She walked steadily. She was not afraid of the dark. Hwanung was awake in his low house when she returned. He saw the light of her oil lamp come on across the village. He sat very still on his thin straw mat. He listened to a thought that had been forming in him for weeks. The thought was, "I have stayed in this body for years now. I have eaten their porridge. I have walked their paths. I am almost one of them already. The crossing she made, I could make a crossing too." It was a heavy thing, what he was thinking. To put aside some part of his heaven. To let a god's body soften into a man's body. To choose to be smaller than he had been. To choose her the way she had chosen herself. He did not decide that night. He decided in the morning, after he had walked once around the village in the slow pale dawn. He stopped at the great sandalwood tree. He placed his palm on the bark. He nodded once, yes. He did not tell anyone yet. He did not tell her. He wanted her to keep doing what she was doing. that practice she had built, until it had finished its full shape. The crossing she was making was not yet finished. Evening number 60. Ungnyeo went to the pines again. The grove had become familiar in a way her own house was not yet. She knew which root to sit on, which trunk to lean against, which patch of needles felt softest to a bare heel. She said, that evening, "Sometimes I think this is enough. The trees, the work, the ordinary mornings. Maybe asking for more is too much. Maybe what I have is already a kind of answer." She paused, she considered. Then she said, "But the longing is also true. Both can be true. Maybe this is what being human is. Wanting and accepting at the same time." She smiled at her own sentence. The first time she had smiled in the grove, the wind moved. The pines made a soft sound that was not a voice. She felt, she could not have said why, that something had heard her. Not the asking, the accepting, the thing she had said about both being true. She walked home through the dusk. Something in her step had loosened. Not the longing, the grip on the longing. She held it now the way you hold a small bird, gently, with no plan to keep it forever. Days went by. She kept going. The grain, the small evening fire she lit outside her house now to keep warm in the cool spring nights. Her hands had finished becoming hands. Her loneliness had finished becoming her loneliness. She noticed Hwanung had grown quieter. Not absent, quieter. He still came to sit beside her in the evenings. But he watched her in a different way now, as if he were memorizing something, as if a leaving were close. She did not ask. She trusted him to tell her when he was ready. She had a bear's gift for letting other beings be who they were until they wanted to be otherwise. It was one of the gifts the cave had not taken from her. Evening number 92. The grove, the same root, the same trunk. She sat down. She did not speak for a long time. The pines waited. The sky above the canopy passed slowly from amber into indigo into deep blue. She said, eventually, "I think I am learning what waiting is for. It is not for the answer. It is for the changing of the one who waits, the one I am asking for. Even if no one comes, I am becoming her. The ready one, the one who can be met. Maybe you've been there. The night you said the thing out loud, and the thing did not change but you did." Ungnyeo sat with her sentence. The pines did not answer. The pines did not need to. The answer was already in her. She walked back to the village. She passed the great sandalwood tree. She lifted her hand slightly to it. A small gesture that had become a habit. She walked to her small house. She stopped. There was a folded cloth on her step, new, pale blue. She knelt. She opened the cloth slowly. Inside it was a small bronze hairpin, plain, well made, the kind of thing a partner gives a partner. She held it carefully in her palm. She did not yet know what it meant. She knew it meant something. She looked across the village toward Hwanung's house. The small amber glow of his oil lamp was on. She closed the cloth. She placed it inside her house on the low ledge. She sat outside on the step and waited. She did not go to him. She let him come. Hwanung saw her sit on the step. He set down his lamp. He did not put on his ceremonial robe. He did not bring his staff. He walked across the village in his simple inner garment. He came to her as a man comes, not as a god comes. He stopped a few steps from her. She looked at him. He did not have his usual edge of gold. He looked, almost, like one of the village men, just taller, just calmer. She understood without being told what he had decided. She stood up. She did not say anything. She did not need to. She held out the small bronze hairpin he had left for her. She tilted her head slightly forward. He stepped close. He took the hairpin. He set it carefully into her hair. That was the wedding. There was no priest, because there was no one above them. There was no crowd, because the village was already asleep. There was a hairpin. There was a step. There was a long, quiet breath that they took together. The next morning the village woke and saw Hwanung's pale silk robe folded carefully on the step of his old house, never to be worn again. The two of them walking together to the great tree to bow. They did not announce. They did not need to. They lived in her small house. They built a second room onto the back. He learned her ways of doing the small daily things. She learned his. They made each other laugh at small things. The village understood that the center of Shinshi had quietly moved. A season passed, then another. She felt something change in her body. Something small, something steady. She did not say anything for many days. She wanted to be sure. She had a bear's patience for waiting until a thing was real. She told him on a clear, cold autumn evening, sitting beside him on the bench. She said only, "There is going to be a child." He did not speak for a long time. Then he placed his hand on hers. He bowed his head. He breathed once and let it out slowly. The villagers learned slowly, through the way the two of them walked. The way Hwanung carried small things for her now. The way she slept later in the mornings. The village's first child of God and bear, woman was coming. They did not know what it meant. They knew it mattered. Winter deepened. Snow came. Ungnyeo grew slower in her movements. She did not stop going to the pine grove on warm afternoons. She walked there with one hand on her abdomen now. She told the pines about the child. The pines kept listening. Hwanung told the wind spirit, the rain spirit, and the cloud spirit. The three of them came to the foot of the great sandalwood tree in the cold dawn. Hwanung knelt. He told them. They bowed once, each in their own way, and they understood. Spring came again. The mugwort in the meadow grew thick. Ungnyeo walked up to it once more, slower now, and crushed a single leaf between her fingers. The smell of her own becoming again. This time, also the smell of the child's becoming. Late spring. The night was warm. She felt the first pulling of the child wanting to come. She told Hwanung. He brought the elder women of the village. They prepared the small back room with clean cloths and hot water. The labor was long. She breathed through it the way she had once breathed through garlic, slowly, without arguing. She did not cry out. She had a bear's gift for sitting still inside a hard thing. The women held her hand. Hwanung waited just outside. Just before dawn, the child came. A small, dark-haired boy. The elder women caught him. They washed him gently. They wrapped him in a clean white cloth. They placed him on Ungnyeo's chest. The cave had given a person. The person had given a person. Hwanung came in. He knelt beside her. He looked at the small face. He looked at her. The two crossings were finished, hers and his. The third was beginning. The one in the small wrapped bundle on her chest. He bowed his head and wept once, quietly. They named him Dangun. The word held sandalwood, the great tree at the center. The word held altar, the flat stone among the roots. The word held the long-rooted patience of his mother, and the cloud, soft generosity of his father. The villagers gathered outside the house at dawn. They did not crowd. They stood in a loose ring at a respectful distance. When Ungnyeo and Hwanung carried the child out into the morning, the village bowed, not deeply. Just enough. The way you bow to something new. Hwanung walked with Ungnyeo to the great sandalwood tree. They placed the child gently on the flat stone altar among the roots. The pines on the lower slope were quiet. The cloud above the summit was still. The whole long prayer had finally come through. The first months with the child were quiet. Ungnyeo did the small work of any new mother. Feeding, holding, singing the half-remembered songs the village women had taught her in long afternoons. The child grew. He was small. He was steady. Hwanung carved a small wooden bird that hung above the cradle. It turned slowly in the warm air rising from the floor. The child watched it without blinking for long stretches. Hwanung said, "That is how I used to look at the earth from heaven." A year passed. The child took his first steps in the dirt outside their door. He walked toward Hwanung first. Then he walked toward Ungnyeo. He sat down on the ground and laughed at his own success. The village laughed with him. He was a quiet child. He listened more than he spoke. He sat for long stretches on the wooden step watching ants carry small grains. He had his mother's patience for the slow work of small things. He had his father's gold flecks in his dark eyes. When he was 4, his mother began to take him to the pine grove with her. Not to pray, just to be quiet among old trees. He sat on the same root she had once sat on. He copied her stillness. The pines accepted him without surprise. When he was 7, his father began to teach him the 360 things. The making of a fire, the shaping of clay, the reading of the 7 northern stars. Dangun learned slowly. He learned thoroughly. He had time. He was the child of 2 parents who knew what time was. But Hwanung was changing. The villagers noticed, slowly. The pale luminous edge that had once shone faintly along his skin was gone now. His hair had a few strands of gray. His back was a little less straight at the end of a long day. He had chosen, at the start, to step further into mortal time. The choice was not free. Each year cost him something. He never said it. He sat on the bench in the evenings beside Ungnyeo and watched the light go, and did not say it. Ungnyeo knew. She did not say it either. They sat through long evenings without saying it. The thing that did not need words sat between them. That he was choosing, again, to be smaller. To match her. To go where she would go. Stay with this. It matters before the end. There are gifts that cost the giver. The giving is the gift, but so is the cost. Hwanung's choice to age was the second descent. The first was through cloud. The second was through years. But there was another shadow rising, not from inside, from outside. Other tribes had begun to gather along the far edge of the river. Strangers. They had not come yet. They had been watching. Word came down to the village that they had been watching for some time. They were not enemies. Not yet. But they were a question. The first question Shinshi had ever faced from outside its own boundaries. What does a sacred city do when other people who are not part of it begin to want what it has? Hwanung sat with the village elders under the great tree. He listened more than he spoke. He had aged. He no longer made decisions quickly. He took the long way around. He let everyone speak before he spoke. One other said, "We should fight them. We should welcome them." A third said, "We should wait and see." Hwanung listened to all 3. He said, "We will do all 3. Welcome them as friends. Wait to see who they are. Be ready if they are not." A small group of villagers crossed the river the next morning with a wooden bowl of millet porridge and a folded hemp cloth. The strangers met them. The strangers did not speak the same words, but they took the bowl. They returned the cloth folded a different way. Through small gestures, through pointing, through pieces of food shared, the villages began to know each other. Some of the strangers crossed the river to live in Shinshi. Some of Shinshi crossed back to live with them. The boundary moved. The boundary opened. Hwanung watched. He was tired in his body now, but the model of the open boundary pleased him. The kind of city that had the great tree at its center could afford to be open. The roots held. The branches reached. But more tribes came, from the north, from the west. Not all of them brought folded cloths. Some of them brought spears. The 3rd year of the open boundary, a small fight broke out at the far edge of the millet fields. 3 villagers were hurt, none killed, but the air had changed. Hwanung met with the elders again. The decision was harder this time. The kind of city Shinshi had been was a city of 360 small things. None of those things were the making of weapons. He had not taught that. He had not wanted to. He said, finally, "We will not make weapons to take what is not ours. We will make a few only to keep what is ours. We will teach our young men the old defensive arts. We will not become them." The elders bowed. The decision was set. Dangun was 12 now. He sat at the edge of the elder council. He listened. He did not speak. His mother had taught him that. Listening was the first work of a leader. His father had taught him that. A hard decision is one that costs even the one who makes it. That winter Hwanung fell ill. He did not call it ill. He said he was tired. Ungnyeo brought him warm broth. She sat beside him through long nights. The cough in his chest did not get better. The years he had given were finally being asked back. He spoke quietly with Ungnyeo. He spoke quietly with Dangun. He did not give long speeches. He had never been a long speech man. He told them small things. The names of certain stars. The way to read the cloud above the summit. The way to listen for what the great tree was saying. He said to Dangun, "When the time comes, build a city of your own. Not bigger than this one. Different. Move it where the morning light comes first. Call it Asadal, the morning place. Let the people you choose to lead choose you back." He said to Ungnyeo, "You carried a child. You carried a village. You carried me, more than I knew at the time. Thank you." Her eyes did not fill. She had a bear's strength for sitting still inside a hard thing. She placed her palm on his cheek. She nodded once. Hwanung died at dawn 3 days later. The first dawn after the longest night of the year. The villagers came quietly to the doorway of his house. They placed small offerings on the wooden step. A handful of millet, a dried persimmon, a single white silk thread. They buried him under the great sandalwood tree, beside the flat stone altar. Ungnyeo cut a small lock of her own long black hair and placed it in his folded hands before they covered him. Dangun stood at the foot of the grave. He did not speak, he bowed once very low. That spring Ungnyeo grew quieter. She still went to the pine grove. She still took Dangun with her. But she walked more slowly. She slept more deeply. She did not speak about Hwanung. She did not need to. He sat beside her in every silence she sat in. Dangun grew tall. He grew calm. He grew steady. He learned every name in the village. He listened to every elder's grievance without interrupting. The villagers began, quietly, to bring small disputes to him before they brought them anywhere else. They had begun to choose him. Now this is the part the old stories rarely linger on. The middle years between a great parent and a great child. The slow becoming. The years of nothing dramatic happening. Only a young man slowly turning into someone the village would soon trust with everything. Stay with this. The next part is his. A few years passed quietly. Dangun grew into a young man of about 20. He was tall like his father had been. He was steady like his mother. He worked the fields. He walked the boundaries. He carried a small wooden staff topped with a carved bird. He had begun to carry the small bronze mirror at his hip. The same one his father had carried. It hung from a leather belt beside a long ceremonial dagger. He did not draw the dagger. He never had. He carried it as a sign that he could. Ungnyeo had grown old. Her long black hair was streaked with gray now. Her hands were lined. Her step was slower. She still walked to the pine grove on warm afternoons. She still sat for a long time among the roots. Dangun walked beside her on those afternoons. He did not hurry her. He did not offer his arm unless she asked. He knew his mother's pride. He knew her bear's gift for doing the small hard things by herself for as long as she could. One afternoon, sitting against the great pine, his mother spoke. She said, "When I am gone, you will move the village. Or rather, you will let the village be moved by what you build next. Do not stay here only because I am buried here. The roots will know." Dangun bowed his head. He said, "I will go where you tell me to go." She said, "I am not telling you. I am freeing you to go. The two are different. Listen to your father's voice in the cloud above the summit. He will tell you the place." That winter Ungnyeo died quietly in her small house. She had asked to be left alone the last hour. Dangun sat just outside the door, on the wooden step. He listened to her breathing slow. He listened to it stop. He did not move for a long time. They buried her beside Hwanung under the great sandalwood tree. The two graves matched. 2 flat stones. 2 small silk threads left at the head of each. 2 long lives held now in the slow patient roots of the tree they had both helped tie a ribbon to. Dangun stood for a long time at the foot of the 2 graves. He bowed once, very low, the same bow he had given his father. He stood up, he turned. He walked back to his small house. The work was now his. He spent the winter listening. He sat with the village elders. He walked the boundary. He climbed partway up the mountain at dawn and sat for an hour in the cold pale light. looking at the cloud above the summit. He listened for his father's voice in the cloud. He waited. One morning the cloud parted briefly. The pale gold light came through in a single thin column. It touched a low ridge of mountains far to the east. Dangun watched. He understood. The east. The morning place. The place where the light came first. He came down from the mountain. He gathered the village elders under the great sandalwood tree. He told them. The old place would remain a sacred place. The graves would stay. But the new city would rise where the morning light came first. Asadal, the morning place. The elders did not argue. They had been listening to the cloud above the summit too. They had been waiting for him to say it. They bowed once. They began the work of preparing the move. A first scouting party went east. They walked for 3 days. They came to a wide flat plain bordered by a slow river to the south and low hills to the north. The morning light came in clean, unbroken by ridges. They knew. They came back. They told Dangun. The move took most of a year. They did it slowly. Some people stayed at Shinshi. Some came east. They did not abandon the great tree. They did not bring the great tree with them. The roots of one place, the branches of another, both held. At the new place they began to build low timber houses, a wide central avenue of packed earth, a great drum on a wooden tower in the center, low stone walls around the outer edge, not for fortress, for frame, for the shape of belonging together. Dangun did not build a palace. He built a low timber house with a slightly larger central room where he could meet the elders. He kept his small bird-topped staff. He kept his bronze mirror. He kept the long dagger. He did not crown himself, but the elders crowned him themselves. On the first morning, the morning light came clean across the new wide avenue. The elders gathered. They placed a thin band of bronze around his brow. They bowed. They said, "Dangun." He bowed back. That was the founding. There was no parade. There was no speech. There was a thin band of bronze. There was a bow. There was the morning light coming clean across the wide avenue. The first kingdom of the people, who would later be called Korean, had begun. Dangun ruled the way he had been raised. He listened more than he spoke. He carried small disputes through to the end without rushing. He walked the boundary at dusk, the way his father had walked it. He sat at the altar at dawn the way his mother had sat in the pines. He set down a small set of laws. Not many. 5. Do not take what is not yours. Help the old care for the young. Tell the truth at the altar. Bury your dead with their tools. The same 5 his father had said in Shinshi. He added 2 of his own. Speak gently to those weaker than yourself. Make room at your fire for one stranger each year. The villagers nodded. They wrote them down. They made small carved tablets and placed one at every village center. Other tribes came again. From farther away this time. They had heard of the morning city. They came with curiosity, not with spears. Dangun met them at the edge of the low stone wall. He did not invite them in. He did not turn them away. He sat with them on the dirt outside the wall. He listened. They told him about their lands. About a long winter that had been hard. About lost children. About scattered family. He nodded. He did not promise. He said, "I will think for one night. Come back at dawn." That night he went to the altar. He sat alone. He listened. The cloud above the eastern ridge was very still. He felt his father's old slow attention. He felt his mother's bare patience in his own chest. He decided. At dawn he met the strangers. He said, "Come into the city. Live among us for one season. Work the fields with us. If at the end of the season you wish to stay, you may stay. If you wish to return, return with seeds. Either way, you go home with full hands." Most of them stayed. A few returned home with bags of millet seed. The boundary of his people had grown without a fight. The kind of growing his father would have approved of. The kind of welcome his mother had received once, in folded cloth. Years the kingdom grew, slowly, carefully, not by conquest, by the small useful gifts that traveled along the slow river to the south and along the foothill paths to the west. Bronze mirrors, hemp cloth, Millet seed, the 7 laws on small carved tablets. Other tribes adopted the 7 laws. They added a few of their own. The small carved tablets stood in the centers of villages from the foothills to the eastern coast. The pattern of the morning city spread without anyone making it spread. Dangun married. The old story does not say very much about her. A woman from one of the tribes that had stayed after the first season. They had 3 sons. The boys grew up in the small house at the center of the morning city. They learned the 7 laws first. The boys grew tall. They took on small responsibilities. The eldest learned the names of every village in the kingdom. The middle learned the patient art of settling disputes. The youngest learned the slow craft of moving grain across long distances. Each found his work. Dangun watched his sons work. He thought of his father teaching him the 360 things. He thought of his mother teaching him to be still. He thought, they are the same teachings, only farther down the slope of years now. The roots are still holding. He visited Shinshi each spring. He walked the long path back to the great sandalwood tree. He bowed to the 2 graves. He tied a single new ribbon to the trunk for each of them. He did not speak to them. He sat for a while. He walked back. Years passed. The kingdom was now called Gojosian, the old kingdom of the morning. The villages from the foothills to the eastern coast were part of it. Dangun did not call himself emperor. He did not call himself king. He let the people call him what they called him. Teacher, elder, father. He aged slowly, more slowly than mortals. The trace of his father's blood was in him. His hair grayed by degrees. His back stayed straight for many years. His step stayed even. He lived a long time. The old story says, 1,000 years. The old story exaggerates with love. He gave the work of leading slowly to his sons. The eldest first, then the middle, then the youngest. He did not retire all at once. He stepped back by small steps. He had a bear's gift for doing the slow, hard things by degrees. His sons in turn gave the work to their sons. The kingdom continued, not without troubles. Other tribes still came, sometimes with spears, sometimes with seeds. The 7 laws grew into 10, then 12. Then they were called simply, the way of the morning. Dangun himself walked less and less. He still walked the boundary at dusk. He still sat at the altar at dawn. But his afternoons were spent on the bench beside the avenue, where he could see the whole city moving past him. He liked it there. Children came to sit beside him. They did not know he was the founder. They knew he was the old man on the bench who knew every name. He told them small stories, about a bear and a tiger, about a great tree, about a cave, about the slow becoming of a person. Most cultures have a story like this one. A founding ancestor, a first king, a line that begins somewhere, in a cave, in a river, on a mountain. The story is not Korean alone. The shape is older than Korea. Romulus and Remus had a wolf. Moses had a basket. The Yamato emperors had a sun goddess. Every people, in the long quiet of their beginning, looks back and finds an animal, a god, a moment of crossing. They tell the story to know who they are. What is special in Dangun is not the descent of a god, or the patience of an animal, or the founding of a kingdom. Each of those, taken alone, is found in many places. What is special is the marriage, the willingness of heaven to bend down, the willingness of the bear to climb up. Most founding myths choose one direction. Heroes climb up, or gods descend down. Korean myth holds both at once. The 2 crossings meet in the middle. The middle is where Dangun is born. The middle is the morning place. 3,000 years on, Korea still calls its country a place that meets in the middle. Mountains, sea, north, south, heaven, earth. The shape of Dangun's birth is still the shape of how the country thinks of itself. A meeting, an open boundary. Back at the bench, the old man told the children a different story each afternoon. Sometimes about Hwanung, sometimes about Ungnyeo, sometimes about a tiger who had run and who had been forgiven for running. He did not tell only the heroic parts. He told the leaving parts too. He said, the tiger was not bad. The tiger was the tiger. Some of us are made for caves. Some of us are made for forests. The tiger went home. The bear went forward. Both lived their right lives. Do not be afraid of being the tiger if the tiger is what you are, a child said. But Mr. Did the tiger ever come back? Dangun smiled. He said, he came back as a different thing. He came back as the wind in the Foothill forest in the autumn. He came back as the sound at night that makes you sit very still. He never stopped being part of the story. The child nodded. The child accepted this. Dangun's stories did not always tie themselves up with neat endings. The children noticed. The children, perhaps without knowing it, learned how to live in stories with loose ends. Which is most stories. The years kept going. Dangun's eldest son took on more of the work of the kingdom. Then the middle. The youngest preferred to travel. He carried small bronze mirrors and millet seed to the far villages. The 7 laws traveled with him. The kingdom held not perfectly. Some seasons were lean, some tribes left, some came back. The slow river to the south flooded one summer and took down a row of houses. The villagers rebuilt. Dangun watched them rebuild from his bench. He thought, this is what a country is, steady rebuilding. One spring his second son brought a young woman to him at the bench. The young woman came from a tribe far to the east. She had walked many days. She had come, she said, because she had heard about an old man who told stories on a bench. She wanted to hear them. He told her his stories. She listened. She wrote some of them down on small wooden slats in her own writing. She asked permission. He gave it. She thanked him. She walked back east the next morning. The stories went with her. That was one of the first times the story of Dangun was written down. By a woman from a tribe whose name we no longer remember. The story moved farther than the kingdom did. The story was always going to outlast the kingdom. Years more. The old man on the bench grew older. His sons were now in middle years. His grandchildren now sat at his feet to hear the stories. He told them slower than he used to. He sometimes drifted off mid-sentence. The grandchildren waited patiently. They had inherited the patience. Maya, listening tonight, maybe you've been one of these grandchildren. Maybe in your family, there was an old voice that drifted in mid-sentence, and you learned to wait without finishing the sentence for them. That is one of the small inheritances. The bear mother taught it. One autumn evening he stood up from the bench and said, I think I will walk a little farther this time. He walked, leaning on his bird-topped staff, toward the eastern edge of the city. His youngest son walked beside him without offering an arm. At the eastern gate he turned and looked back at the city. He stood for a long time. His son did not speak. The autumn light grew slowly indigo behind them. The great drum tower rose dark against the deepening sky. He said to his youngest son, I am going up the mountain now. Do not follow me beyond the spring. I would like to walk the last bit alone. The son bowed. He did not protest. He had inherited that too, the willingness to let his father do what he came to do. They walked together as far as the small mountain spring, the same spring whose mugwort had once changed his mother. Dangun stopped. He turned to his son. He bowed once, he said, Go home, live the 7 laws. The son bowed back very low and left. Dangun walked on alone. The path went up into the higher ridges of the mountain. The stars came out above him. He did not hurry. He walked the way his mother had walked. Even-paced, steady. As if he had all the time in the world. He did, in a way. He walked all night. The stars moved across the sky above him. He passed the pine grove where his mother had once prayed. He stopped. He bowed once to it. He kept walking. He passed the cave where she had been a bear. He bowed to it too. He kept walking. He came to the great sandalwood tree at the heart of Shinshi. The old village was quieter now. Most of its people had moved east years ago. A few elders still kept the place. He bowed to the great tree. He bowed to the 2 graves at its base. He sat with them for a long while. He did not speak. He did not need to. He had been carrying his parents inside him for so long that arriving at their stones felt like coming back to a place he had never quite left. He stood up slowly. He walked on. The mountain rose steeper now. He climbed slowly. He did not stop. He passed the line where the pines thinned. He passed the line where the granite began. He came at last to the flat altar stone at the summit of Mount Tabak, the same place his father had first set foot. He stood on the altar stone. He looked east. The first thin pale gold of dawn was just beginning to show along the horizon. He had timed it well. The old man on the bench had timed his last walk well. He breathed once. He let it out slowly. The cloud above him moved. It lowered itself slowly over the granite peak. The same gesture his father had taught the village 3 generations ago. A hand placed gently on a child's head. Dangun closed his eyes. He smiled the small private smile of his mother in the pine grove. The cloud closed around him. The pale gold dawn light caught the edges of the cloud. For a moment, the old man in the cloud was hard to tell apart from the cloud itself. Then the moment passed. The cloud lifted. The altar stone was bare. That is what the old story says. He went into the cloud. He became the spirit of the mountain. The mountain that had once been the boundary between heaven and earth was now also the place where a king had returned to his half heaven, half earth blood. His sons in the morning city woke to a strange feeling in the air. The youngest, who had walked his father to the spring, stood up and looked east. He understood. He bowed once toward the mountain. He went to wake his older brothers. They sent a small group to the summit. The group climbed for 2 days. They came to the altar stone. They found the bird-topped staff lying carefully across the stone. They found Dangun's bronze circlet beside it. They did not find anything else. They did not bring the staff and the circlet down. They placed them where they had been found. They built a small, low stone altar around them. They left a single offering bowl. They walked back down the mountain in respectful silence. From that day onward, the people of the Morning Kingdom climbed Mount Tabak every year on the 3rd day of the 10th month. They placed small ribbons on the great sandalwood tree below. They placed small bowls at the summit altar. They thanked Dangun. They thanked his mother. They thanked his father. The kingdom held for many generations after him. It changed names. It changed shapes. It became other kingdoms. Each one looked back to Dangun. Each one began its history with a bear and a mountain, and a marriage of cloud and earth. The story was carried from village to village, from mother to daughter, from grandfather to grandchild, from shaman to shaman. The slats the Eastern woman had once written on were copied many times over. Then they were carved on stone. Then they were printed in books. The Samguk Yusa, written in the 13th century by a Buddhist monk named Aryan, gathered the story together in one place. He wrote it down carefully. He did not change the strange parts. He let the bear and the tiger be a bear and a tiger. He let the cloud lower itself onto the mountain. He understood, even in his time, 800 years ago, that the story was older than any kingdom that had carried it. He wrote the bear mother into the long memory of his country. The bear mother stayed, centuries later, when Korea found itself in danger of losing its own name to other empires. The story of Dangun rose again. People remembered. The bear woman, the cloud prince, the morning kingdom. Korea kept its name partly because the story would not let it forget. Today, Korea celebrates the 3rd day of the 10th month as a national holiday. They call it Ungnyeo, the day the sky opened, the day Hwanung came down, the day the long crossing began. School children learn the story. They tie ribbons to trees. The gesture again, 3,000 years on. The names change, the kingdoms rise and fall. The story does not. Bear mother, cloud prince, the boy born in the morning, the 7 laws, the garlic and the mugwort, the cave, the pines, the slow river, the sandalwood tree at the center of everything. Korean shaman ritual still calls Hwanung's 3 spirits to a ceremony. Pungbake the wind, Yusa the rain, Unsa the cloud. The drumbeat opens the sky. The dance carries the prayer up. The shaman is descended in spirit from the first morning of Shinshi. The pattern of Korean rural villages still places a sacred tree at the center. The sandalwood from Shinshi has become every old shrine tree along every old road. Tie a ribbon, make a wish, leave a small offering, walk on, the same gesture. Korean families still hang strings of garlic at their doors against bad spirits. They still burn small cones of mugwort on aching backs. The herbs of the cave have stayed in the kitchens. The myth lives, quietly, in the smell of garlic at a winter dinner. Korean writers, painters, poets still come back to Dangun. The bear mother is in their poems. The cloud prince is in their songs. The cave is in their novels. The story has been told so many times, in so many ways, that it has become part of the air a Korean person breathes. The story is also small. It is sized for a child, a bear who waited, a boy who became a king. The shape is right for a bedtime, which is one of the reasons we are telling it now. Some stories last because they are big. Some last because they fit a quiet hour. Back at the morning city, after the staff and the circlet were placed at the summit altar, the eldest son took on the work of leading. He led for many years. He was not as wise as his father had been. He was wise enough. He kept the 7 laws. The kingdom held. He went up to Mount Taebaek every year on the 3rd day of the 10th month. He bowed at the summit altar. He placed a small offering bowl. He sat for an hour on the cold granite. He listened to the cloud above the peak. Sometimes the cloud felt like it answered. Sometimes it felt like nothing more than cloud. Both, he came to feel, were part of the same answer. Sometimes a parent answers. Sometimes a parent does not. Sometimes the silence is the answer. He had inherited his father's bear, patience for living with both. He returned to the city. He kept on. His son in turn took on the work of leading. Then his grandson. Then his great-grandson. The 7 laws stayed. The 3rd day of the 10th month stayed. The pilgrimage to the summit stayed. The morning city stayed in the morning. The bear mother's lineage moved through every leader. The cloud prince's lineage moved through every leader. The morning came every morning. The cloud lowered itself sometimes. The mountain held the long steady attention of a long steady people. Maya, listening tonight. Perhaps you are inside a long line you cannot see. The names go back farther than you know. The patience is older than your grandmother. The bear, mother's gift sits in your shoulders. The cloud prince's gift sits in the slow gold light of your kitchen at dawn. The story does not ask anything of you. Some stories ask. This one only asks you to know it, and to let knowing it be enough. The bear mother already endured. The cloud prince already chose. Their work is done. Yours is whatever yours is. But if you are tired tonight, if today asked you to wait, asked you to be patient with something that did not seem to be moving, the bear, mother's 21 days might keep you company. She would understand the long quiet hours. She knew them. And if today asked you to choose something, to step forward into a thing you cannot quite see yet, the cloud, Prince's first descent might keep you company. He stepped through the cloud not knowing exactly what he would find. He found something good. And if today asked you neither, if today was just a long ordinary day that did not announce itself as anything, the morning city's slow rebuilding after the flood might keep you company. Most days are that. Most lives are that. Most kingdoms are that. Steady. We are coming now to the end of the story. Not the end of the kingdom. The story does not really end. But the part we are telling tonight, the part that began in a cave and rose to a morning altar, is finishing now. Stay with it just a little longer. The bear, woman walked out of the cave. The cloud prince stepped down through the sky. They met at the altar of a great tree. They had a son who learned the 7 laws and rose, in his own time, into the cloud above the morning peak. The kingdom he founded held for 2,000 years and gave its long shape to a country that holds, today, the same shape. A meeting place. A morning country. A place where the cloud sometimes lowers itself onto the mountain. A place where the bear, mother's patience is still in the kitchen. 3,000 years on, On the 3rd day of the 10th month, school children and grandfathers walk together to old shrine trees. They tie ribbons. They make small wishes. They do not always remember the names. The names are not what is being remembered. The patience is. That is the founding of Korea. A bear who waited, a god who descended, a sun who rose, garlic and mugwort, a great tree, a flat altar, a morning peak. The cloud and the granite, meeting forever at the line where one becomes the other. This is the story. This was always the story. The bear mother's patience. The cloud prince's choice. The morning child's 7 laws. The mountain that held them all. The story is finished. The mountain has not finished. It is still there. It is still the boundary. It is still the welcome. So what does the story say? Not what does it teach? The bear mother would not lecture. Let it sit a moment. The meanings will come up on their own, like grain. A being can become another being, slowly, with the right herbs, without leaving the cave too soon. The change is real. The patience is what makes it real. 2. Not every being is meant for the cave. The tiger was not bad. The tiger was the tiger. He went home. The bear went forward. Both were right. 3. Heaven sometimes has to come down to be useful. Hwanung's father knew. The cloud floor cannot teach a child to plant a seed. You have to bring the cloud down to the dirt. 4. The meeting matters. 2 beings very different, agreeing to share a small hut at the edge of a village. From that hut, a country. From that country, 3,000 years. 5. A child of 2 parents who chose each other carries both. Dangun's pale gold light, Dangun's bare patience. He was both. He gave both to his country. The country still carries both. 6. Patience is not waiting for nothing. The bear mother's 21 days were not empty. Something was happening underneath the fur. The waiting was the doing. 7. Prayer is not always asking. Ungnyeo learned this in the pine grove. She asked for a partner. She received a way of being someone who could be met. Both were given. 8. A leader is not above. Dangun sat on a low wooden bench at the side of the avenue. Children sat at his feet. He told stories. That was a king's work in this country. 9. An ending is not the same as leaving. Dangun went into the cloud. He did not leave. He became the steady old presence on the mountain. The mountain still feels watched. 10. The story keeps living because it is small. A bear, a cave, a herbal mixture, a meeting, a morning. None of it is too big to fit in the breath of a sleeping listener. 11. The herbs of the cave are still in the kitchen. Garlic for clearing. Mugwort for waiting. The grandmothers know. They never stopped being part of the cure. 12. There is no enemy in this story. The strangers came, the strangers were welcomed. The tiger left, the tiger was forgiven. Even the cave was a friend. That is rare in a founding myth. 13. A marriage of opposites can found a country. Heaven and earth. Cloud and bear. The thing they make together is the morning. The morning is still where the country meets itself. 14. The story is older than its writing. Ariane wrote it down 800 years ago. The story was already ancient. The bear mother is older than she sounds. 15. A story can outlast a kingdom. Gojojin is gone. The 7 laws are not. The bear mother is not. The cloud prince is not. The mountain is not. The story is still here. 16. The gestures travel. Tying a ribbon. Hanging a string of garlic. Burning a cone of mugwort. Climbing a small mountain on a holy day. The myth lives in the hands. 17. The story is gentle. There is no great battle. No betrayal. No sacrifice required. Only patience. Only descent. Only the slow founding of a morning country. 18. Bedtime is the right time for it. A gentle story for the slow hour. The bear mother's patience for the long quiet. The cloud prince's gold for the gentle close. The morning child for tomorrow. That is what the story says. The meanings are not in any one place. They are in all the small places. A bowl of garlic, a ribbon on a tree, a kettle at dawn, a bench at dusk. A note about the day, the 3rd day of the 10th month. Korea calls it Gacheonjeol, the day the sky opened. It is a national holiday. It honors the Descent of Hwanung. Korea also has a Dangun shrine on Mount Menesan, where pilgrims still climb to a small stone altar. They place a single bowl. They bow once. They walk back down the long granite stair. Modern Korean schoolbooks tell the story of Dangun in their first chapters. Children learn the bear mother's 21 days before they learn the names of generals. The patience comes first. The Korean word for bear, gum, still echoes in the names of mountains, rivers, villages. Gomnaru, Gomso. The bear mother is in the geography. She left her name everywhere. Korean shaman drums still call Pungbaek Yusa, Unsa, the wind, the rain, the cloud. The three spirits of Hwanung. The drumbeat opens the sky again briefly, the way it once opened. Modern Korean medicine still uses mugwort. Moxibustion, the burning of small mugwort cones on the skin, is still practiced. The plant of wading through pain is still a cure. Korean home cooking still uses the same garlic the bear mother once chewed. 2 heads of garlic in nearly every dish. The clearing herb is still doing its old quiet work in the kitchen. Korean writers, painters, songwriters still come back to Dangun. The bear mother's patience is in their rhythm. The cloud prince's gentleness is in their warmth. The myth keeps writing the country slowly. Today, in any small Korean village, the great old tree at the center is the great-great-grandchild of the sandalwood at Shinshi. Tie a ribbon. Make a wish. The same gesture, 3,000 years on. That is the legacy. Not in monuments, in ribbons, in garlic, in mugwort, in a low bench at a village edge, in the patience of a Korean grandmother. In the morning that always comes in clean. The cave is closed now. The pines are as slow. The mountain is patient. The story is finished. You can rest. The sandalwood at the center of Shinshi is asleep too. The ribbons are still on the branches. The morning will come slowly. There is no hurry. Next time, somewhere warmer, older. A different kind of fire. A different mountain. Wait for it. Something is waiting. You can almost hear it. A different language, a different sky. Not tonight. Not yet. For tonight, this is the story. The bear mother, the cloud prince. The morning child. Let the cave close softly. We'll be here, when you're ready. Another story. Another night like this. Another quiet hour. The pines on the lower slope are quiet. Their needles are still. The old roots hold the long quiet sleep of a long quiet country. The slow river is slower now. The water moves under thin starlight. The bear mother's patience flows in it. So does the cloud, prince's gold. The mountain holds the cloud. The cloud holds the morning. The morning will come. You don't have to wait. Sleep now. Good night. The bear mother is still. The cloud prince is still. The morning child is still asleep.